For more on this, Professor Steve Keene, who's the head of economics at Kingston University, is joining us over Skype from London. Professor Keene, thank you very much for joining us. This bill is facing crucial parliamentary votes at the moment. It's seen by the government as pro-business and pro-growth. Will it deliver, in your opinion, if it passes through Parliament?
No, it's relatively irrelevant. This is the sort of stuff that mainstream economists obsess about, and seeing all crises like the one we're going through now is due to problems with competitiveness and insufficient trading hours, etc., etc. It'd possibly have a minor impact upon tourists spending slightly more money on a Sunday in Paris. But in fact, these sorts of reforms are completely tangential to the problems that France faces, along with the other countries in Europe, which really come out of the austerity focus of the EU rather than coming from inefficiency issues in the French economy.
And one of the points as well in the actual law is the fact that they want to shorten labour arbitration procedures, which deals more with layoffs than actually increasing job prospects. How do they think that that would somehow solve the unemployment crisis in France at the moment?
Well, the usual mainstream thinking is that unemployment is due to workers not wanting to work hard enough, and if you make it easier to sack them, it actually makes the labour market more flexible and therefore improves employment. In fact, what makes workers inflexible is the level of mortgage that they're carrying, and this issue of private debt is really the problem that is being completely ignored by the OECD and by the EU. And also by the economic minister in France this time round. So these things are, like most of reforms economists argue for, they're storms in a teacup. And ironically, the OECD has proven this just recently by releasing a publication called Going for Growth. And in that, the country which gets the highest marks of the OECD doing the reforms they think are necessary is Greece. And that's the worst performing economy in Europe. So it shows how relevant these reforms are.
And in regards to these reforms, you said some are calling this a storm in a teacup. We know that the European Commission is set to decide next week whether they want to actually fine Paris for missing its deficit targets. Will this somehow stop this fine going through against Paris, in your opinion?
Potentially, because the people who run the EU have swallowed the blue pill of conventional economic thought and believe this sort of stuff actually matters. So they may well say, oh, well, they've done what we want, we'll take the penalty away. So in that political sense, it might be worth doing. But I think generally speaking, it shows it's an irrelevant issue. The main thing is to address the private debt problems in Europe. And this, as usual, is economists failing to focus on the important issues.
And of course, these laws are going to be coupled with tax breaks for companies and low-wage earners. What else and what more do you think the government actually needs to do to bring about this much-needed growth, considering that they've been seeing near zero growth over the past few months?
Partially, actually, the tax cuts are a positive thing because that'll mean there'll be more of a government deficit going into the economy, which will stimulate spending. This whole focus on austerity is what's causing the crisis, and this is the point the Greeks are making right now and being ignored by the conventional economic minds in Brussels. Ironically, the one thing the French might do that may actually benefit them in this whole package is run a larger deficit.
Okay, I'm going to have to thank you there, Professor Steve Keene, who's the head of economics at Kingston University. Thank you very much for joining us.